Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The penthouse was a fucking cathedral of excess, all glass and gold, the kind of place where you could smell the money in the air crisp, like new bills and old whiskey. The Manhattan skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a reminder that this was a world built on power, not promises. Leon Grayson leaned back in a leather chair that cost more than most people's rent, a tumbler of 50-year-old scotch in his hand, his jaw sharp enough to cut through bullshit. At 34, he was the king of AI, a billionaire who'd sold his platform for a number nobody could pronounce and turned it into a biotech empire. His heart, if it still beat, was buried under tailored suits and a smirk that said he'd never lost a game. The room was loud, packed with men who made millions before breakfast hedge fund sharks, tech bros, the kind of guys who laughed like they were spitting in your face. Blake, Leon's oldest friend, if you could call a snake like him a friend, slammed a shot glass on the marble counter, his grin all teeth and trouble. "Bet you won't do it," he said, his voice cutting through the haze of cigar smoke and ego. Leon raised an eyebrow, swirling his scotch. "Do what the others," leaned in, their eyes glinting like wolves smelling blood. Blake's smirk widened. "Pick a girl off the street, any girl. Take her in. Clean her up. Dress her like she belongs up here." He paused, sipping his whiskey, letting the room hang on his words. "Bring her to the gala tomorrow night. Let's see if a billionaire can make trash sparkle." The room roared, laughter sharp and cruel. Someone shouted, "Only if she doesn't stink," another added. "Bet she bolts before the appetizers." Leon's smirk was lazy, practiced, the kind that hid how much he hated losing. "And what do I get if I win?" he asked, his voice smooth, like he was already bored. Blake leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "My Tribeca building, that glass beauty you called ugly last week." Leon chuckled, low and dark. "That's not a prize, it's charity." He should have said no, should have lit another Cuban and walked back to his empire. But pride's a bitch, especially when you've spent your life making sure nobody sees you bleed. "Fine," he said, downing his scotch, the burn matching the fire in his gut. "You're on." That's how Leon Grayson, tech god and Forbes cover boy, ended up in Brooklyn at 2 a.m. Rain pouring like the city was trying to drown itself. Bed-Stuy was alive despite the storm neon signs flickering. A saxophone wailing from a corner bar, the smell of wet asphalt and fried plantains hanging in the air. He stood under a black umbrella, his driver idling nearby, and scanned the street. His eyes landed on a girl huddled under a busted awning outside a shuttered pharmacy, her hoodie soaked, her body curled like she was trying to disappear. She didn't look up when he approached, her hands clutching a tattered paperback Nikki Giovanni's poems. The pages warped from rain, strands of wet, curly hair clung to her cheek, dark against her brown skin. She looked like the kind of girl people stepped over, the kind you forgot before you even saw her. Leon stopped a few feet away, rain dripping off his umbrella. "Cold night," he said, his voice neutral, testing the waters. She looked up, slow, like the world annoyed the shit out of her. Her eyes were green, sharp as broken glass, and they cut right through him. "You gonna tell me I don't belong here?" she asked, her voice hoarse, pure Brooklyn, no filter. Leon's lips twitched, a spark of something curiosity, maybe flickering in his chest. "No," he said, stepping closer, the rain loud between them. "I'm gonna ask if you want a hot bath." She blinked, once, twice, then let out a dry laugh. You high or just fucking crazy? He smiled, real this time, not the practiced smirk. Neither. Just rich and bored. Her eyes narrowed, sizing him up his tailored coat, his polished shoes, the umbrella that probably cost more than her last meal. Then she said something that hit like a punch. You think dirt's what makes someone dirty. I've met suits like you who stink worse than the streets. Leon froze, her words slicing through his armor. He should have walked away, found some other girl, someone who'd jump at the chance. But those eyes, that voice they held him. Maybe, he said, his voice quieter. Want to prove me wrong? She stared, the rain drumming around them, her fingers tightening on the book. What's the catch, she asked, her tone flat, like she'd heard every lie in the book. No catch, he said, holding out a hand. Just a warm place to crash. One night. She didn't take his hand, just stood, shoving the book into her hoodie pocket. I'm not your damn project, she said, brushing past him, her shoulder grazing his arm. The contact sent a jolt through him, unexpected and sharp. Lead the way, rich boy. He did, guiding her to the black SUV, the driver raising an eyebrow but saying nothing. The ride to Manhattan was quiet, rain streaking the windows, the city a blur of light and shadow. She sat stiff, staring out, her wet hoodie dripping onto the leather seat. Leon watched her from the corner of his eye, her jaw set, her hands clenched, her green eyes catching every streetlight. What's your name? He asked. She didn't look at him. Sage. Sage what? Just Sage, she said, her voice hard. People like you don't give a shit about last names. He almost laughed. She wasn't wrong. In his world, names were power, tied to bank accounts and skyscrapers. Hers was a whisper, a secret, and it made her different. The SUV stopped at his building, a glass tower piercing the sky. The doorman didn't blink as they walked in, Sage's sneakers squeaking on the marble, her hoodie leaving a trail of rain. The elevator was silent, the numbers climbing to the penthouse, and Leon felt her eyes on him, like she was waiting for the punchline. The penthouse door opened, and Sage froze, her breath catching. The place was a damn palace white marble, black leather, a fireplace that could roast a cow. The city skyline glowed through the windows, a million lights mocking the storm. Jesus, she muttered, her voice low. You live like this most days, he said, tossing his coat over a chair. You want that bath or not? She crossed her arms, her hoodie clinging to her curves, her eyes narrowing. You brought me here to wash me. Go ahead. Scrub the Brooklyn off. Leon frowned, caught off guard. It's not like that. Then what's it like? She shot back, her voice sharp, her book still clutched like a shield. He didn't answer, because he didn't know. Leon Grayson, the guy who could predict markets with a glance, was fucking clueless. Towels in the guest bath, he said, nodding toward a hallway. Clothes, too, if you want 'em. She stared, then shrugged, walking past him, her scent rain and something warm, like coffee lingering. The bathroom door clicked shut, and Leon exhaled, pouring himself a whiskey. He heard the water running, a soft hum echoing through the tile, and his mind went places it shouldn't. He shook it off, pacing the living room, the skyline staring back like it knew something he didn't. Sage took her time, When she stepped out, the air shifted. She wore his black hoodie, too big for her, the sleeves covering her hands, and joggers that hung low on her hips. Her curly hair was wet, framing her face, her brown skin glowing under the soft lights. She looked, not small, but raw, like the world hadn't broken her yet. Her green eyes met his, unflinching. "This where you turn me into Cinderella?" she asked, her voice dry. "Or you just gonna stare?" Leon's throat tightened, a heat stirring he hadn't expected. "Food," he said, his voice rougher than he meant. "You hungry?" She shrugged, leaning against the counter, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. "Depends. You got anything that ain't some fancy-ass sushi?" He smirked, grabbing his phone. "Grilled cheese work." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Real butter. No bullshit truffle oil." "Deal," he said. Ordering from a diner he hadn't called in years, they sat at the kitchen island, the silence heavy but not empty. She picked at the sandwich when it arrived, her fingers quick, like she was used to eating fast. "Why me?" she asked, not looking up. He froze, the whiskey glass halfway to his lips. "Someone dared me," he said, honest because lying felt wrong with her. Her eyes snapped to his, sharp and cold. "A fucking bet." "You traded my life for what?" A laugh. "A building," he said, his voice flat, regretting it the second it left his mouth. She laughed, bitter, setting the sandwich down. "You're a real piece of work. Rich boy." She stood, heading for the couch. "I'll crash here. Keep your guilt to yourself." Leon didn't move, her words burning. He watched her curl up on the couch, her back to him, the throw blanket barely covering her. She didn't ask for more, didn't complain, just shut him out. He stood in the hallway, whiskey in hand, staring at her silhouette. For the first time in years, he felt something guilt, maybe, or something sharper. He didn't sleep, just lay in his bed, the city's hum too loud, her cough from the couch echoing in his head. Morning came, gray and wet. Sage was in the kitchen, barefoot, frying eggs in his skillet like she owned the place. Her hair was tied back with a ribbon, her hoodie sleeves pushed up, revealing wrists marked by faint scars, stories she hadn't told. "You're out of butter," she said, not looking up. "Used olive oil. Hope that doesn't break your billionaire code." Leon leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a smile tugging at his lips. "You cook, I survive," she said, flipping an egg. Big difference. A mug of coffee sat on the counter black, no sugar. He picked it up, tasted it, raised a brow. "How'd you know I'd take it like this?" "Didn't," she said, her eyes flicking to his, a challenge in them. "Made it how I drink it. You got lucky." He sipped, watching her move, her hips swaying slightly to a tune she hummed, Nina Simone, raw and low. His phone buzzed. Jada. Sage's friend, blowing up her texts. "You're with that rich asshole. Get out, girl." Sage ignored it, but Leon saw the tension in her shoulders. "Your friend's worried," he said. "She's always worried," Sage said. "Plating the eggs. Thinks you're gonna eat me alive." He stepped closer, his voice low. "And what do you think?" She turned, her green eyes locking onto his, unflinching. "I think you're playing a game you don't understand. Rich boy. And I'm not here to lose." Leon's heart kicked, her words a spark in the dark. He didn't know what this was, but as she handed him a plate, her fingers brushing his, he knew one thing: Sage wasn't just a bet. She was a fucking reckoning. Yo, if Sage and Leon's rainy night got you hooked, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment about the wildest bet you've ever made. Let's see who's got balls like Blake Sage stood in the penthouse kitchen, barefoot on the cold marble, the morning light spilling through the windows like it was trying to expose every damn secret in the room. Her curly hair was pulled back with a cheap elastic, strands escaping to frame her brown face, her green eyes sharp as ever. She flipped an egg in Leon Grayson's skillet, the sizzle loud in the quiet, her hips swaying slightly to a Nina Simone tune she hummed low in her throat. The oversized hoodie, his hoodie, hung loose on her, the sleeves covering her hands, but it didn't hide the strength in her shoulders or the faint scars on her wrists. Stories she hadn't shared. Leon leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his dark sweater clinging to his frame, watching her like she was a puzzle he didn't know he'd been trying to solve. "You're out of butter," she said, not looking up, her Brooklyn accent thick, unbothered, used olive oil. "Hope that doesn't fuck with your billionaire vibes." Leon's lips twitched, a smirk fighting to break free. "You cook, I survive," she said, sliding the egg onto a plate. Big difference. A mug of coffee sat on the island black, no sugar, steam curling up like a dare. He picked it up, sipped, raised a brow. "How'd you know I take it like this?" "Didn't," she said, her eyes flicking to his, a spark of challenge in them. "Made it how I drink it. You just got lucky. Rich boy." He chuckled, low and rough, the sound warming the sterile room. "Lucky's not my usual M.O. "Yeah. Well, neither's picking up strays," she shot back, plating another egg for herself. She slid his plate across the island, her fingers brushing his for a split second, a jolt shooting through him. She pulled back fast, like she'd felt it too, and sat on a stool, digging into her food like she hadn't eaten in days. Leon watched her, the way her jaw worked, quick and deliberate, like she was used to meals being interrupted. He sat across from her, the coffee mug warm in his hands, the city's hum a dull roar beyond the glass. "You sleep okay?" he asked, his voice softer than he meant. Sage shrugged, not looking up. "Couch is better than a bench." "Still ain't a bed. Though, you could have taken the guest room," he said, leaning back. "Plenty of space?" She snorted, her fork pausing. "And owe you more than I already do. Pass." "You don't owe me shit," he said, his tone sharper, surprising himself. Her eyes snapped to his, green and piercing, searching for the lie. She didn't find one, and that seemed to unsettle her more. "Whatever," she muttered, pushing her plate away, half the egg untouched. "What's the plan?" "Rich boy." "You gonna dress me up for your little gala or what?" Leon's jaw tightened, Blake's bet flashing in his mind make trash sparkle. He hated how it sounded now, how it felt like a blade in his gut when he looked at her. "It's not about the gala," he said, his voice low. "I just want you to stay." Sage's laugh was dry, cutting. "Stay for what? So you can win your dumbass bet and pat yourself on the back?" He flinched, her words hitting harder than he expected. "It's not like that anymore," he said, leaning forward, his eyes locked on hers. "I don't give a fuck about the bet." "Then why am I here?" she asked, her voice steady but sharp, like she was daring him to lie. He didn't answer right away, because the truth was a mess he hadn't untangled. Leon Grayson, the guy who crushed competitors before lunch, was fucking stumped by a girl from Bed-Stuy. "Because you make me feel something," he said finally, his voice raw, like he'd ripped it from somewhere deep. "And I haven't felt shit in years." Sage went still, her fork clattering to the plate. Her eyes searched his, green and unyielding. And for a second, the air between them crackled, heavy with something neither could name. Then she stood, breaking the spell, her chair scraping the floor. "Don't put that on me," she said, her voice low, almost a warning. "I'm not your savior." She walked to the living room, her bare feet silent, and curled up on the couch, grabbing her book, Nikki Giovanni, dog-eared and loved. Leon stayed at the island, his coffee cold, his chest tight. He thought of his mom, the note she'd left when he was 9, "I can't stay." He thought of the empire he'd built to prove he wasn't worthless, the women who'd seen his title before his face. Sage saw neither, and that scared the shit out of him. His phone buzzed Blake, texting about the gala. "Got your girl ready. Don't fuck this up." Leon ignored it, his eyes on Sage, her head bent over the book, her lips moving slightly as she read. He stood, walking to a cabinet in the corner, pulling out a blank canvas and a box of brushes, still sealed. He set them on the coffee table in front of her, the thud loud in the quiet. She looked up, her brow furrowing. "What's this?" "You're an artist." "Right," he said, his voice steady but careful. "Saw the way you held that book. You've got stories. Paint one." Sage stared at the canvas, her fingers tightening on the book. "I don't do that anymore," she said, her voice flat, but her eyes betrayed her pain, sharp and raw. "Why not?" he asked, sitting on the arm of the couch, close but not crowding. She swallowed, her gaze dropping. "'Cause the girl who painted, she didn't make it out of Bed-Stuy." Leon's chest ached, her words heavy with a grief he recognized. He thought of his mom's voice, gone before he could hold on to it. "She's still in there," he said, nodding at the canvas. "Give her a chance." Sage's eyes flicked to his, green and guarded. But something softened. She set the book down, her movements slow, like she was afraid the canvas might bite. Her fingers grazed the brushes, hesitant, then gripped one, the bristles soft against her skin. "You don't know what you're asking," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe not," he said, standing, giving her space. "But I know you're not done." She didn't respond, just stared at the canvas, her breath uneven. Leon walked to his office, leaving her alone. But he couldn't focus. His phone buzzed again. Jada, Sage's friend, leaving a voicemail. "Yo, Sage, you with that rich asshole? Get your ass out of there. He's trouble." Leon deleted it, his jaw tight. But Jada's words stuck, echoing his own doubts. An hour later, he found Sage in the spare room he'd turned into a makeshift studio, the canvas propped against a chair. Streaks of blue and gold slashed across it, angry, alive. She stood there, paint on her fingers, her hoodie pushed up to her elbows, her curly hair falling loose. The light from the window hit her face, casting shadows that made her look like a goddamn painting herself. "It's shit," she said, not looking at him, her voice rough. "It's honest," he said, stepping closer, his voice low. "That's better." She turned, her green eyes locking onto his, and the air shifted, thick with something dangerous. He moved closer, drawn like a moth, his breath catching as he stopped inches from her. The paint on her fingers glistened, her chest rising and falling. The room so quiet he could hear her pulse. "You don't know me," she said, her voice shaky, but she didn't back away. "Then let me," he said, his voice a whisper, his hand hovering near her cheek, not touching, waiting. Her eyes searched his, green and raw, and for a second, he thought she'd close the gap, but she stepped back, her breath hitching, her fingers tightening on the brush. "I can't," she said, turning away, her voice barely audible. "Not yet." Leon nodded, his chest tight, and backed off, giving her space. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice steady, a promise he didn't know he could keep. She didn't respond, just picked up the brush again, her hand trembling as she added another stroke to the canvas. Leon watched her for a moment, then left, his heart pounding like he'd run a marathon. He didn't know what this was, but it wasn't a bet anymore. It was something real, and it scared the shit out of him. Later that day, Sage slipped out to a Bed-Stuy cafe, needing air, needing home. The smell of coffee and cornbread grounded her. The sound of a saxophone drifting from the street. She sat in a corner, sketching in her book, when Jada walked in, her braids in a high bun, her eyes blazing. "What the fuck?" "Sage," Jada said, sliding into the booth. "You're shacked up with that billionaire. You lost your damn mind." "It's not like that," Sage said, her pencil pausing. "He's different." "Different?" Jada snorted. "He's a rich white dude playing savior. You're Brooklyn. Sis, he's gonna chew you up and spit you out." Sage's jaw tightened, Jada's words echoing her own fears. "I'm not his fucking project," she said, her voice low. "I'm just figuring it out." Jada leaned forward, her voice softer but fierce. "You're too good for this. Sage, come to the Arts Center. We got a spot for you. Paint again. For real." Sage nodded, tucking Jada's card into her pocket. But her mind was on Leon, the way his eyes softened when she painted, the way his voice cracked when he said he felt something. She thought of her mom. "Marla," her voice echoing from a memory. "You're a star, baby. Don't let nobody dim you." Her throat tightened, her fingers tracing the star earring in her lobe. A gift from Marla before she died. Back at the penthouse, Leon was on a call, his voice sharp, dealing with some boardroom crisis. He hung up when he saw her, his eyes searching her face. "You okay?" he asked, stepping closer, his scent wood and whiskey hitting her like a wave. "Yeah." She lied, her voice steady, but her heart wasn't. She walked to the studio, the canvas waiting, and picked up a brush. Leon followed, leaning against the doorframe, watching her paint bold strokes, blue and gold, a woman rising from shadows. The light caught her curls, her brown skin glowing, and Leon's breath caught, his body humming with a need he couldn't name. "You're good," he said, his voice low, stepping closer, his shadow falling over her. Sage's hand paused, her eyes flicking to his, green and fierce. "Don't flatter me," she said, but her voice was softer, her body leaning toward him, drawn despite herself. He moved closer, his hand brushing her arm, the paint on her fingers smearing against his skin. The air crackled, her pulse racing as his gaze dropped to her lips, his breath warm and close. "Sage," he murmured, his voice rough, his fingers lingering, sending a shiver through her. She turned, their faces inches apart, the canvas forgotten. Her heart pounded, her body screaming to close the gap. But fear Jada's warning, Marla's memory, her own scars held her back. "I can't," she whispered, stepping back, her voice breaking. Leon nodded, his eyes dark but patient. "I'll wait," he said, his voice a promise, and left her there, paint on her hands, her heart a fucking mess. Sage Quinn stood in front of a full-length mirror in Leon Grayson's penthouse, her breath catching as she took in her reflection. The navy gown hugged her curves like it was made for her, the deep blue shimmering against her brown skin. Her curly hair pulled back in a loose bun, a few strands framing her face. The silver star earring from her mom, Marla, glinted in the soft light. A piece of Bed-Stuy holding her steady in this Manhattan world. She looked like she belonged, but her green eyes told a different story, sharp, guarded, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. "This ain't me," she muttered, her Brooklyn accent thick, her fingers grazing the silky fabric. Leon stepped behind her, adjusting his tie, his reflection in the mirror all sharp jaw and gray eyes that saw too much. "Funny," he said, his voice low, smooth like whiskey over ice. "'Cause I've never seen you more clearly." Sage's lips twitched, almost a smile, but her stomach churned. Tonight was the gala, the one Blake's fucking bet had been building toward. And she wasn't stupid. She knew what it meant to walk into a room full of rich assholes as Leon's date, a black girl from the streets, dressed up like a doll. "They're gonna stare," she said, turning to face him, her eyes locking onto his, and not the good kind. "Let 'em," he said, stepping closer, his scentwood and spice hitting her like a wave. "You're not here for them. You're here for me." Her heart kicked, his words warm but heavy. She wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into the way his eyes made her feel like she wasn't invisible. But Jada's voice echoed in her head. "He's gonna chew you up and spit you out, sis," her mom's memory. Marla's soft whisper, "You're a star." Baby fought back, urging her to stand tall. "Don't make me regret this, rich boy," she said, her voice steady but laced with warning. He nodded, his gaze intense, like he was making a promise he couldn't break. "I won't." The gala was in a Manhattan ballroom, a glittering cage of glass and gold, chandeliers dripping light like liquid money. The crowd was all tailored suits and sequined gowns, their laughter sharp, their compliments like knives. Sage walked in on Leon's arm, her head high, her navy gown catching every eye. Cameras flashed, whispers trailed her like smoke, and she felt them, the stares, the judgment, the way they sized her up and found her wanting. Her skin prickled, but she kept her face blank, her green eyes cutting through the room like a blade. Leon leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "You good?" he asked, his hand resting lightly on her lower back, the touch sending a shiver through her. "For now," she said, her voice low, her eyes scanning the crowd. She spotted Blake, his smirk all teeth, watching them like a shark smelling blood. Then she saw Elliot Pierce, Leon's rival, his blonde hair slicked back, his smile too smooth as he approached. "Well, damn," Elliot said, his eyes raking over Sage. "Lingering too long. You clean up nice. Didn't think Leon had it in him to pull this off." Sage's jaw tightened, her fingers curling into fists. "Pull what off?" she asked, her voice cold. Pure Brooklyn fire. You think I'm some fucking project? Elliot's smile faltered. But he recovered, chuckling. No offense, sweetheart. Just saying. Leon's got a type temporary. Leon's hand tightened on her back, his voice lethal. Watch your mouth. Elliot. Elliot raised his hands, smirking, and walked off. But his words stuck. Poison in Sage's veins. She pulled away from Leon, needing air, and headed for the bar. The jazz from the live band slow, sultry, filling the room. She ordered a whiskey, neat, and downed it, the burn grounding her. Leon followed, his presence a shadow she couldn't shake. He's an asshole, he said, standing close, his voice low. Don't let him get to you. Too late, she said, turning to face him, her eyes blazing. This whole damn room's got me pegged as your charity case. You think I don't see it? You're not, he said, stepping closer, his hand brushing her arm, the touch electric. You're Sage, and you're fucking incredible. Her breath hitched, his words hitting hard. But before she could respond, a woman in a sequined gown leaned toward her husband, her voice loud enough to carry. Is that her? The homeless girl. What's she doing here? Sage froze, the whiskey glass trembling in her hand. The room seemed to shrink, every eye on her, every whisper a blade. Leon's face darkened, but Sage moved first, stepping toward the woman, her voice low and deadly. I'm not your damn charity case. Lady, she said, her Brooklyn accent cutting through the jazz. I'm here because I choose to be. You got a problem. Say it to my face. The woman flushed, stammering, and the crowd hushed, cameras flashing. Sage's heart pounded, adrenaline surging, but she held her ground, her green eyes fierce. Leon stepped beside her, his hand grazing her waist, a silent show of support. She's with me, he said, his voice calm but sharp, daring anyone to challenge him. The woman looked away, and the crowd shifted, the moment passing, but Sage's skin burned, the weight of their stares heavy. She pulled away, heading for the balcony. The cool night air a relief. The city glittered below, Manhattan's lights mocking her, and she gripped the railing, her breath shaky. Leon followed, his footsteps soft, his presence warm behind her. You didn't have to do that, he said, his voice low, close enough to feel his breath on her neck. Yeah, I did, she said, turning to face him, her eyes locked on his. I'm not here to be your prop, Leon. I'm here to be me. He nodded, his gray eyes softening, and stepped closer, the jazz from the ballroom spilling out, slow and aching. You're more than I deserve, he said, his voice rough, his hand reaching for hers, his fingers brushing her knuckles, sending a spark through her. The air crackled, her pulse racing as he pulled her closer, their bodies inches apart. The city's glow caught his face, his jaw tight, his eyes burning. Sage, he murmured, his hand sliding to her hip, the navy gown soft under his fingers, her curves molding to him. The music swelled, the saxophone weaving through their breaths, and she felt his heat, his need, matching hers. Her hands found his chest, the fabric of his suit rough under her palms, her nails grazing as she leaned in, their lips so close she could taste the whiskey on his breath. Leon, she whispered, her voice trembling, her body screaming to close the gap. The world faded the gala, the stairs, the bet until it was just them, the night, the music. His hand tightened on her hip, pulling her flush against him, her breath hitching as she felt the hard lines of his body, the heat of him seeping through her gown. Her lips parted, his breath warm, teasing, and she arched into him, a soft moan escaping as their mouths hovered, aching to meet. Her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Sage pulled back, her heart pounding, her fingers trembling as she checked it. Jada, texting girl, you see this? Some blogs calling you Leon's Brooklyn side piece. Sage's stomach dropped. The headline flashing on her screen, Billionaires Bet Harlem Hustler or Harlem Heartbreaker. The article, penned by Vanessa Blake, had a blurry photo of her leaving the penthouse, her curly hair unmistakable. The words dripping venom. Is Sage just another gold digger? Or is Leon Grayson slumming it with a black beauty fuck? Sage hissed, her hands shaking, the whiskey glass forgotten. Who the hell is Vanessa? Leon's face darkened, his jaw tight as he read over her shoulder. A reporter with a grudge, he said, his voice low. Lethal. I'll fucking bury her. You can't bury this, Sage said, her voice breaking, her eyes stinging. They're already painting me as some hood rat chasing your cash. You're not, he said, stepping closer, his hand cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin. Warm and steady. You're Sage, and I see you. Her throat tightened, his words a lifeline. But the weight of the article, Jada's warning, the gala's stares, it was too much. I need air, she said, pulling away, her voice hoarse, heading back inside, the jazz now a dull roar in her ears. Leon followed, his presence steady but not crowding. I'll fix this, he said, his voice a promise, his eyes locked on hers as they re-entered the ballroom. Sage didn't respond, her heart a war zone. She wanted to believe him, wanted to hold on to the way his touch made her feel alive. But as they moved through the crowd, the whispers louder now, she felt the city's eyes on her, judging, defining. She thought of Marla, her mom's voice in a memory. Don't let him dim you, baby. She straightened, her green eyes fierce, and took Leon's arm, not because she needed him, but because she chose him for now. Back at the penthouse, Sage kicked off her heels, the navy gown pooling around her as she stood by the window. The city's lights cold and distant. Leon loosened his tie, watching her. The silence heavy. I'm sorry, he said, his voice rough. Stepping closer, his hand hovering near her shoulder. Don't be, she said, turning. Her eyes locked on his. Just don't let them break me. He nodded, his hand brushing her arm, the touch sending a shiver through her. Never, he said, his voice a vow, and for a moment, she believed him. Sage Quinn sat on the edge of the couch in Leon Grayson's penthouse, her bare feet cold against the hardwood, her curly hair loose and wild, spilling over her shoulders. The navy gown from the gala was gone, replaced by her old hoodie and jeans, the silver star earring from her mom, Marla, glinting faintly in the dim light. Her green eyes were fixed on her phone, the screen glowing with a new headline that hit like a fist. Billionaires Bet Exposed, Harlem Hustler, Played for a Fool. The article, leaked by Vanessa Blake, included an email from Blake's bet. Pick a girl off the street, make trash sparkle and a grainy photo of Sage leaving the penthouse. her face clear, her hoodie unmistakable. The words were Venom Sage, a Brooklyn nobody, was just a pawn in Leon Grayson's game. But who's playing who? Fuck, Sage whispered, her hands shaking, the phone slipping to the couch, her heart pounded. The memory of the gala's stairs charity case, homeless girl mixing with Vanessa's poison and Elliot Pierce's warning, Leon's got a type temporary. She thought of her mom, Marla, her voice soft in a memory. Don't let him dim you, baby. But right now, Sage felt dimmed, like the light she'd fought to keep was flickering out. Leon stood by the window, his shirt unbuttoned, his hair a mess, a whiskey glass in his hand. He'd seen the article, called his legal team, roared at them to fucking bury it. But the damage was done. Sage's name was trending, her face plastered across gossip blogs, the world painting her as a gold digger, a joke. He turned, his gray eyes dark with guilt, and saw her sitting there, her shoulders hunched, her breath uneven. Sage, he said, his voice rough, stepping toward her. I'll fix this. You can't, she said, her voice low, cracking, her eyes still on the phone. They know about the bet, Leon. They're laughing at me. And you let it happen. He flinched, the whiskey glass trembling in his hand. I didn't know it'd go this far, he said, his voice raw. It was a stupid game. And I fucked up. But you're not a pawn. You're... What she cut in, standing, her green eyes blazing, her hoodie falling off one shoulder, revealing the curve of her collarbone. Your redemption arc. Your fucking muse. I'm not here to fix you. Leon. Her words hit like a blade, and he stepped closer, his hands raised, pleading. You're not, he said, his voice breaking. You're Sage, and you're everything to me. She laughed, bitter, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Everything. You didn't even know my name when you made that bet. You picked me because I was nothing, and now I'm your everything bullshit. Leon's chest ached, her pain mirroring his own, his mom's note. I can't stay. The years of building walls to hide how worthless he felt. I was an asshole, he said, stepping closer, his voice low, desperate. But the second I saw you, it stopped being a bet. I swear. Sage. She shook her head, her curls bouncing, her hands clenching. Swear all you want, she said, her voice shaking. Elliot told me you tanked a black-owned startup years ago. Played dirty. Fucked over people who looked like me. Is that true? Leon froze, his jaw tightening, the guilt he'd buried rising like bile. Yeah, he said, his voice raw. It was a deal. Numbers, not people. I didn't know the guy was black, but that's no excuse. I was a prick. Sage. I've been trying to make it right, but I can't undo it. Her eyes searched his, green and raw, and for a moment, she saw the truth, the man behind the billionaire, bleeding like she was. But the article, the bet, the world's judgment, it was too much. You should have told me, she said, her voice barely audible, her hands trembling. You let me walk into that gala blind, let them tear me apart. I'm sorry, he said, reaching for her, his fingers grazing her arm, warm and pleading. I fucked up, but I'm here now. Stay. Sage. We'll fight this together. She pulled back, her breath hitching, her eyes stinging. I can't, she said, her voice breaking. I need to be me, not your goddamn headline. Sage grabbed her book, Nikki Giovanni, her lifeline, and stuffed it into her hoodie pocket. She didn't pack, didn't look back, just walked to the studio where her half-finished canvas sat, blue and gold slashes like a scream. She tore off a corner, scribbled a note, "I'm not your game," and left it on the counter, her heart splintering with every step. The elevator doors closed, the city's hum swallowing her, and she was gone. Leon stood frozen, the note in his hand, her words burning into him. The penthouse felt hollow, the skyline mocking him, the whiskey glass forgotten on the counter. He sank to the floor, the canvas staring back, her paint still wet, her scent coffee and rain lingering in the air. Fuck. He growled, his voice cracking, his eyes stinging with tears he hadn't shed since he was 9. He wanted to chase her, to beg, but her note stopped him. I'm not your game. He'd let her down, and chasing her now would only make her feel smaller. Sage's subway ride to Brooklyn was a blur, the fluorescent lights harsh, the car rattling like her thoughts. She clutched her book, her star earring cold against her cheek, her eyes burning. She replayed every moment with Leon, the coffee he'd sipped. Black, no sugar. The way he'd watched her paint, like she was art. The heat of his hand on her hip at the gala, their almost kiss. Then she saw the article again. The email. Elliot's smirk. Vanessa's venom. I'm such a fucking idiot, she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek, her reflection in the window a stranger. She got off in Bed-Stuy, the familiar smell of wet asphalt and fried plantains grounding her. Jada's apartment was a tiny walk-up, the kind where the radiator hissed and the walls were thin. Jada opened the door, her braids in a messy bun, her eyes softening when she saw Sage's face. Oh, sis, she said, pulling her into a hug, the warmth breaking Sage's resolve. She sobbed, her body shaking. Jada's arms strong around her. He fucked me over, Sage said, her voice muffled, her tears soaking Jada's shirt. It was all a damn bet. Jada pulled back, her eyes fierce. I told you, Sage, rich white dudes don't get us, but you're here now, and we're gonna fix this. Sage shook her head, sinking onto Jada's couch, the springs creaking. I don't know if I can, she said, her voice small. I let him in. Jada, I thought he saw me. He did, Jada said, sitting beside her, her voice softer. But he fucked up. And you don't owe him shit. You're Sage. Girl. You're Brooklyn. You don't break. Sage's throat tightened. Jada's words echoing Marla's. You're a star. Baby. She thought of her mom's hands, rough from grading papers, her laugh when they'd sing Nina Simone together. She thought of the canvas she'd left behind, blue and gold, a piece of her soul. I need to paint, she said, her voice steadying, a spark igniting. I need to be me again. Jada grinned, handing her a sketchbook. That's my girl. The art center's got space. Let's get you back. Back in the penthouse. Leon was a wreck. He hadn't slept, hadn't shaved. His whiskey glass a constant companion. The canvas sat untouched. Sage's note beside it. Her words a knife in his chest. He replayed their moments, her humming Nina Simone, her green eyes when she painted, the way her body felt against his on the balcony, their breaths sinking, their lips so close. He thought of the bet, Blake's laugh, his own arrogance, and hated himself. His phone buzzed. Blake, gloating, told you she'd bolt. Leon threw it against the wall, the screen cracking. He called his security team, not to find Sage, but to make sure she was safe. Don't approach her, he said, his voice hoarse. Just watch. He couldn't chase her, not after what he'd done, but he couldn't let her go either. He stood by the window, the city cold and gray, and remembered a night they danced, slow, to Nina Simone's Feeling Good. Her body had pressed against his, her curves soft, her breath warm against his neck. This is dangerous, she'd whispered, her voice trembling, her hands fisting his shirt. He'd wanted to kiss her, to hold her, but she'd pulled back, fear in her eyes. Now, that fear was his fault. Days passed, each one heavier. Sage stayed with Jada, sleeping on a cot. The Brooklyn night alive outside saxophones. Laughter, life. She went to the art center, sketching in a corner, her hands moving like they remembered who she was. Jada watched, proud but worried. You're healing, she said, handing Sage a brush. But don't let him back in too easy. I won't, Sage said, her voice steady, but her heart wasn't sure. She thought of Leon's eyes, the way he'd said, "You're everything." She thought of Marla, her mom's voice in a memory. You're enough, baby. She painted a woman rising from ashes, her skin brown, her eyes green, her hands holding a star. It was her, Sage, unbroken. One night, Jada burst in, her phone in hand, her eyes wide. You need to see this, she said, showing Sage a blog post. It wasn't Vanessa's, it was Jada's own, exposing Vanessa's fake sources, tracing the article's IP to her server. She's done, sis, Jada said, grinning. And you're not. Sage's heart raced, hope flickering, but fear held her back. What about Leon? She asked, her voice low. He's still the one who bet on me. Jada sighed, sitting beside her. Maybe, she said, but I saw the way he looked at you at the gala. That wasn't a game. You gotta decide what's real. Sage. Sage didn't respond. Her eyes on her painting. The woman rising. She didn't know if she could trust Leon. Didn't know if she could face the world's judgment again. But as the Brooklyn night wrapped around her, she felt her strength returning. She wasn't done fighting, not for her art, not for Bed-Stuy, not for herself, and maybe, just maybe, not for Leon. Sage Quinn stood in the heart of a Bed-Stuy art center, her bare feet steady on the worn wooden floor, the air thick with the smell of paint and possibility. Her curly hair was loose, cascading over her shoulders, catching the warm glow of the studio lights. The silver star earring from her mom, Marla, glinted against her brown skin, a quiet reminder of who she was. Tonight was her moment, a public art show at the community center. Her chance to take back her story from Vanessa Blake's poison and the world's judgment. Her painting dominated the wall, a black woman rising from ashes, her skin dark, her eyes green, her hands clutching a star. Bold strokes of blue and gold screaming resilience. It was Sage, unapologetic, unbroken. Jada Miles buzzed around her, all fire and braids, her phone in hand as she coordinated the crowd. You're about to fuck 'em up, sis, Jada said, her grin wide, her eyes shining with pride. Jada's blog post exposing Vanessa's fake sources had gone viral, the IP trace proving the gossip queen's lies, and the internet was turning on her. But Sage's art was the real weapon tonight. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for Bed-Stuy, for Marla, for every black woman who'd been called less than. The room was packed locals in hoodies and jeans, artists with paint-stained hands, a few Manhattan types sniffing around for clout. Sage's heart pounded. But her green eyes were steady, her navy t-shirt and jeans a quiet rebellion against the gala's glitz. She thought of Grayson, his gray eyes haunting her dreams, his voicemail still on her phone. "You're everything. Sage. Call me." She hadn't called, hadn't texted, but his voice, raw and broken, had cracked something open in her. She'd run from him, from the bet, from the pain. But tonight, she wasn't running anymore. The curator, a tall black woman with a buzz cut, tapped the mic. "Sage Quinn's up next," she said, her voice booming. "This sister's got a story, so y'all better listen." Sage stepped forward, her sneakers silent, her hands trembling but her voice clear. "This is rising from ashes," she said, her Brooklyn accent thick, unyielding. "It's for my mom, who taught me to shine no matter what. It's for Bed-Stuy, where I learned to survive. It's for every black woman who's been called a hustler, a nobody, a game. I'm not your fucking headline. I'm Sage, and I'm still here." Her words rang out, raw and fierce, her green eyes blazing as she told her truth, not the bet, not Leon, but the real shit, losing Marla to cancer, sleeping on benches, fighting to keep her light alive. The crowd leaned in, some nodding, some wiping tears. Jada filmed it all, her grin fierce, the room electric with support. Sage's chest heaved as she finished, her eyes stinging, but she didn't cry. She stepped back, the applause loud, the curator hugging her tight. "You own that, sis," she whispered. Sage nodded, her heart full but heavy. She'd taken her story back, but the ache for Leon lingered, a bruise she couldn't ignore. As the crowd mingled, Jada rushed over, her phone buzzing. "Vanessa's done," she said, showing Sage a new post. "She tried another article, some bullshit about you seducing Leon, but I dropped the receipts, her emails, her fake sources. Nobody's buying her lies now." Sage's eyes widened, relief mixing with exhaustion. For real, Jada said, squeezing her arm. "You're free." "Sage. Now what about him?" Sage's throat tightened, Jada's question cutting deep. She didn't answer, her eyes drifting to the painting, the woman rising. Before she could speak, the center's doors swung open, and Leon walked in. The room shifted, heads turning, whispers rippling. He was in a black jacket, no tie, his dark hair mussed. His gray eyes locked on Sage, like she was the only thing in the world. Her breath caught, her body humming with the memory of his hands, his voice, their almost kiss on the balcony. She wanted to run to him, to scream at him, to do both at once. He crossed the room, ignoring the stairs, and stopped in front of her, his scentwood and whiskey hitting her hard. "You didn't tell me," he said, his voice low, rough, like it hurt to speak. "I'd have been here." Sage's jaw tightened, her emotions a tangle. "I didn't know if I could trust you," she said, her voice steady despite the ache. "Elliot said you fucked over a black business, played dirty. You admitted it. Leon. You didn't tell me the whole truth. Leon. His eyes darkened, guilt flashing across his face. I told you the truth, he said, his voice raw. I was an asshole. Sage, I made a call that hurt people, and I've spent years trying to fix it, but I never meant to hurt you. I should have told you everything, and I'm sorry. Her chest tightened, his honesty cutting deeper than a lie. You let me walk into that gala blind, she said, her voice shaking. You let them call me a gold digger, a hustler. I deserved better. You did, he said, stepping closer, his voice barely a whisper. You deserve everything. Sage. I was scared you'd see the worst in me and leave. And I lost you anyway. Her eyes stung, his words a mirror to her own fear losing Marla. Losing herself. Losing him. I'm still here, she said. Her voice soft, her green eyes locked on his. But I'm mad as hell. He nodded, his lips twitching, almost a smile. Good. You should be. I fucked up. Sage. But I'm not giving up. Before she could respond, Vanessa Blake strutted in, her blonde hair sleek, her red lipstick sharp, her eyes glinting with venom. The crowd parted, cameras flashing, her smile a weapon. Well, isn't this sweet, she said, her voice dripping sarcasm. The Brooklyn nobody and her billionaire. You really think you belong here? Sage's blood boiled, her hands clenching. You got some fucking nerve, she said, stepping forward, her Brooklyn fire blazing. Your lies are done, Vanessa. Those emails exposed. You're the nobody now. Vanessa's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. You think a blog post scares me, she said, her voice icy. I've got sources you'll never touch. You're just a phase. Sage. Leon will tire of you. Leon stepped forward, his voice lethal. You're done. Vanessa. My team's got your emails, your burner accounts. You're finished. Vanessa's face twitched, her composure cracking. You'll regret this, she hissed, turning on her heel, the cameras trailing her. Sage's heart raced, adrenaline pumping, but Leon's hand on her arm grounded her, his touch warm, steady. You didn't have to do that, she said, turning to him, her eyes locked on his. Yeah, I did, he said, his thumb brushing her arm, sending a shiver through her. For you. The crowd was buzzing, but for Sage, it was just them. Leon's eyes softened, his hand sliding to her waist, pulling her close. I'm sorry, he said, his voice low, urgent. For the bet, for the lies, for letting you hurt. I see you, Sage, all of you. Her throat tightened, her body humming as he leaned in, his breath warm against her cheek. The studio lights cast a glow on his face, his gray eyes raw, pleading. I don't deserve you, he whispered, his lips hovering over hers, the air crackling. Shut up, she said, her voice shaky, and closed the gap, their lips crashing together. The kiss was fire deep, hungry, desperate. His hands cupped her face, her curls tangling in his fingers, her body pressed against his, her curves molding to him. The crowd faded, the jazz from a nearby speaker weaving through their breaths, a rhythm only they knew. Her nails grazed his neck, his tongue teasing hers. a low groan escaping him as she arched into him. The kiss slowed, softening, her lips tingling as they parted, foreheads touching, her green eyes locked on his. "Damn," she whispered, her voice hoarse, a smile breaking free. "Damn," he echoed, his eyes blazing, his hands still on her, like he couldn't let go. They didn't stay at the center. Sage led him to the studio's back room, the space quiet, the air thick with paint and promise. The lights were dim, a single bulb casting shadows on her painting. The woman rising. Sage turned on a speaker. Nina Simone's "I Put a Spell on You" filling the room, sultry and raw. She pulled Leon close, their bodies swaying, the music wrapping around them like a vow. His hand slid up her back, her t-shirt soft under his fingers, her breath hitching as he pressed his lips to her neck, his teeth grazing her skin. "Sage," he murmured, his voice rough, his hands tightening, pulling her flush against him. Her hands fisted his jacket, her body humming as she rocked against him, a soft moan escaping as the music swelled. His fingers traced her spine, her hips moving with his, the heat between them electric. They sank to the floor, her legs straddling his, their kisses deeper, slower. Every touch a confession. Her curls fell over her face, his hands catching them, his eyes locked on hers, gray and reverent. "You're fucking magic," he said, his voice raw, his thumb brushing her lip. She smiled, her fingers grazing his jaw, the stubble rough under her touch. "You're not so bad yourself," she said, her voice thick with feeling. They didn't go further, not tonight, but the intimacy was raw, real. Their bodies tangled, their breaths synced, the painting watching like a guardian. Later, they lay on the studio floor, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady under her cheek. The music had faded, the room quiet except for their breathing. "We're not done," she said, her voice soft but sure, her fingers tracing his hand, paint still smudged on her skin. "Never," he said, his lips brushing her forehead, his voice a promise. Sage closed her eyes, the painting above them, her heart full. She'd risen from ashes, and she wasn't falling again. Not for Vanessa, not for the world, not even for Leon. But with him, she was ready to build something real. Sage Quinn leaned against the rusted railing of a Bed-Stuy rooftop, the Brooklyn night alive around her, saxophones wailing from a corner bar, the hum of traffic, the faint smell of fried plantains drifting up from the street. Her curly hair was loose, catching the glow of the city lights, her brown skin warm under the summer air, the silver star earring from her mom, Marla, glinted against her cheek, a quiet anchor to her past. She wore a simple tank top and jeans, her paint-stained hands tucked into her pockets, her green eyes tracing the skyline like it held answers. 3 months had passed since the art show, since Vanessa Blake's lies crumbled, since Sage had kissed Leon Grayson on the studio floor, and somehow, against all odds, they were still here together. Not perfect, but real. Leon stood beside her, his black t-shirt clinging to his frame, his gray eyes soft as they watched her. Not the city. He'd skipped a London deal to be here, traded boardroom battles for quiet nights in Brooklyn, and that alone made Sage's heart ache in a way she wasn't used to. They'd fought through hell, the bet, the headlines, the world's judgment, and come out stronger. Not because they'd won, but because they'd chosen each other, flaws and all. The past months had been a slow rebuild. Sage's art show had exploded. Her painting rising from ashes shared across social media. Her name no longer tied to gossip, but to resilience. She'd started teaching at the Bed-Stuy Art Center, guiding kids with paint-stained hands, her voice steady as she told them to paint their truth. Jada had become her unofficial manager, booking her for bigger shows, her braids bouncing as she hyped Sage up. "You're a damn star, sis." Vanessa was a ghost now. Her blog shut down. Her reputation trashed after Jada's exposé. Elliot Pierce had sent a half-assed apology, admitting he'd lied about Leon's past to stir shit up, and Sage had deleted it without a reply. She didn't need his validation. Leon had changed too. He'd poured money into black-owned art programs, starting with the Bed-Stuy Center, not as a PR stunt, but because he meant it. He'd faced his board, owned his past mistakes, and let go of the need to control his image. He'd even shown up at a poetry night in Brooklyn, awkward as hell in his tailored jacket, listening to Sage read Nikki Giovanni like it was scripture. Jada had side-eyed him, muttering, "Rich boy better not fuck this up." But she'd softened when he stayed for the open mic, clapping for kids who stumbled through their verses. Marla's memory still lingered. Her voice, "You're a star," baby guiding Sage through doubts. She'd dedicated her latest painting to her mom, a canvas of a black woman singing under a starry sky, and hung it at the center, where kids touched it like it was holy. Sage hadn't moved in with Leon, hadn't given up her tiny studio apartment, a closet with a mattress, a plant, and a stack of poetry books, but she let him leave a toothbrush on her sink. Let him steal her hoodie when he crashed there. It was enough. For now. Tonight, they were at Jada's rooftop party, the air thick with laughter and jazz, the city their backdrop. Sage sipped a beer, the bottle cool against her lips, and glanced at Leon, his profile sharp against the skyline. "You're quiet," she said, her Brooklyn accent soft, teasing. "What's up, rich boy?" He chuckled, low and rough, turning to face her, his gray eyes catching the light. "Just thinking," he said, stepping closer, his scentwood and whiskey wrapping around her. "How the fuck we got here?" Sage grinned, her curls bouncing as she tilted her head. "A dumbass bet," she said, her voice playful but warm, "and a girl who wasn't about to let you win." He laughed, the sound real, unguarded, and moved closer, his hand brushing her arm, sending a spark through her. "You're still winning," he said, his voice low, his eyes locked on hers, like she was the only thing that mattered. Her heart kicked, his words landing soft but heavy. She thought of that first night, rain-soaked and shivering, his umbrella a shield she didn't trust. She thought of their dance, their kiss, the way his hands felt like home. She thought of the headlines, the pain, and how they'd fought through it, not just for love, but for themselves. "You ever think about her?" she asked, her voice quiet, the question slipping out. His mom, the one who'd left him with a note, the ghost he'd carried. Leon's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "Sometimes," he said, his voice raw, "but she's not my story anymore. You are." Sage's throat tightened, his honesty a gift she hadn't expected. She set her beer down, turning to face him, her green eyes searching his. "And what's our story?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, her paint-stained fingers brushing his hand. He stepped closer, his hands framing her face, his thumbs grazing her cheeks. Warm and sure. "Us," he said, his voice steady, like a vow. "Messy, real, and worth every damn fight." Her pulse raced, her body humming as his lips hovered over hers. His breath warm, teasing. The city's jazz swelled, a saxophone weaving through the night, their breaths sinking in a rhythm older than words. "You're a lot." "Leon Grayson," she said, a smile tugging at her lips, her hands sliding up his chest, feeling the heat of him through his shirt. "Good," he said, his lips brushing hers, soft at first, then deeper, hungrier. The kiss was electric, a slow burn that ignited every nerve. Her fingers tangled in his hair, her curls catching in his hands. Her body pressed against his, curves molding to hard lines. The rooftop faded, the crowd's laughter a distant hum, the music wrapping around them like a spell. His tongue teased hers, a low groan escaping him as she arched into him, her nails grazing his neck, her breath hitching. The kiss slowed, softening, their foreheads touching, her lips tingling, her green eyes locked on his gray ones. "Damn," she whispered, her voice hoarse, a laugh bubbling up. "Damn," he echoed, his smile soft, his hands still on her waist, like he'd never let go. They didn't stay on the rooftop. Sage led him to her studio apartment, a short walk through Bed-Stuy's pulsing streets, the air thick with summer and jazz. Her place was small, the mattress on the floor covered in thrift store sheets, a single plant in the window, poetry books stacked like friends. She turned on a speaker. Nina Simone's "My Baby Just Cares for Me" filling the room, sultry and warm. Leon pulled her close, their bodies swaying, the music a heartbeat they shared. His hand slid up her back, her tank top soft under his fingers, her breath catching as he pressed his lips to her temple, his stubble grazing her skin. "Sage," he murmured, his voice rough, his hands tightening, pulling her flush against him. Her hands fisted his shirt, her body humming as she rocked against him, a soft moan escaping as the music swelled. His fingers traced her spine, her hips moving with his, the heat between them a fire she didn't want to put out. They sank to the mattress, her legs straddling his, their kisses deeper, slower, every touch a promise. Her curls fell over her face, his hands catching them, his gray eyes reverent, like she was art he'd never finish. "You're fucking everything," he said, his voice raw, his thumb brushing her lip. She smiled, her fingers grazing his jaw, the stubble rough under her touch. "You're not so bad yourself," she said, her voice thick with feeling, her star earring glinting as she leaned in, kissing him soft, then deep, her body melting into his. They didn't go further, not tonight, but the intimacy was raw, real, their bodies tangled, their breaths synced, the city watching through the window. Later, they lay on the mattress, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady under her cheek. The music faded to a hum. Sage's fingers traced lazy circles on his arm, her paint-stained nails catching the moonlight. "You ever think about where we'd be if I hadn't said yes that night?" she asked, her voice soft, her Brooklyn accent warm. Leon's hands stilled in her curls, his voice low. "I'd be the same miserable bastard, hiding behind money. You changed everything." "Sage." She lifted her head, her green eyes meeting his, the city's glow painting his face. "You changed me too," she said. "I was scared to shine. Now I'm me." He smiled, soft and real, pulling her closer. "You were always you," he said, his lips brushing her forehead. I just got lucky enough to see it. They kissed again, gentle, a seal on their truth. Sage settled back against him, her eyes drifting to the city beyond the window. She thought of Bed-Stuy, its jazz, its heart, its fight. She thought of Marla, Jada, the art center, her paintings. She thought of Leon, the man who'd seen her when she couldn't see herself. They didn't need rings, didn't need forever, not yet. What they had was deeper, forged in fire, stronger than headlines. The next morning, Sage woke to sunlight streaming through the window, Leon's arm around her, his breath warm against her neck. She slipped out, careful not to wake him, and found a small box on her nightstand, a silver star earring, matching the one from Marla, with a note, "For my star. I'm here. Always." Her throat tightened, a smile breaking free. She slid the earring in, the metal cool against her skin, and crawled back into bed, her lips brushing his jaw. He stirred, his gray eyes opening, soft and warm. "You found it," he said, his voice sleep-rough. "Yeah," she said, her smile wide, her curls spilling over his chest. "You're stuck with me now. Rich boy." "Good," he said, pulling her close, his lips finding hers, the kiss lazy but deep, the city waking beyond them. Weeks later, Sage stood at the opening of her biggest exhibit yet, this time at a Brooklyn gallery, the walls alive with her paintings, Bed-Stuy's streets, Marla's hands, Leon's eyes. The crowd was thick locals, artists, even Jada, now her official manager, hyping the show like a pro. Leon was there, his hand in hers, his presence steady, not stealing her light. He'd funded the exhibit but let her shine, his pride in her louder than words. Jada clinked her glass against Sage's, her grin fierce. "Told you you'd burn it down." "Sis," she said, her braids bouncing. Marla's memory lingered in the painting Sage had dedicated to her, the crowd touching it like it was theirs too. Leon leaned in, his voice low, "Just for her. You good, better than good," she said, squeezing his hand, the star earrings catching the light. They stepped outside, the Brooklyn night alive, jazz, laughter, life. Sage leaned against Leon, his arm around her, the skyline a canvas of their story. They'd survived the bet, the lies, the pain. They'd chosen each other, not because it was easy, but because it was true. And in that moment, under the stars, Sage knew some stories don't start with fairy tales. They start with a dare, a rain-soaked night, a heart that refuses to break. Those were the stories worth keeping. If Sage and Leon's story hit you hard, smash that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, what's the boldest move you've made for love? Let's keep this fire burning.